And let's begin with the latest that's coming in from the explosions on the INS Sindhurakshak. The Navy has declared all 18 of its personnel on board the submarine as missing. A probe has been ordered into the reason behind the explosions. Naval sources have told Headlines Today that there is a strong likelihood that accidental weapon detonation in the forward area housing torpedoes caused the blast. Let's go across to Arun, who joins us on the phone line. Shiv, to begin with, what do we know of the personnel at that point? They've been declared missing, but what kind of operation is undergoing at this point?
Maruk, 18 people on board that submarine, including 3 officers, the senior weapons officer and the executive officer among them. We've got the names of the personnel on board, but of course we're not going to release them until we have a confirmation on their condition. We're hearing from certain quarters, the 2 main angles that we're hearing. Theories are A, one, that there was a possible battery malfunction which led to an explosion, and B, a more severe situation where there may have been an accidental detonation of some kind of a weapon in the forward area in the submarine. Both these theories are being looked at quite strongly by investigators. But the immediate focus right now, Maruk, is of course on the rescue and salvage operations. This was an enormous blast. It was heard several kilometers away as well, and the submarine has, sunk completely and hit the bottom of the shallow dockyard, the harbour area. So at this point of time, there's very little else happening apart from the actual salvage operation to try and get people out of that submarine. But I can tell you, and there is no confirmation yet on this, so we wouldn't hazard to go out on a limb on information of this kind. But there is information that we're getting from certain quarters that the Navy may be fearing the worst as far as some of the people on board that submarine may be concerned. But like I said, things are developing very rapidly at this time, and we can't put out any of that information until we get an absolute confirmation on it. Several anxious families, awaiting information on their loved ones on board that submarine, but nothing confirmed just yet. But the sheer magnitude of that explosion captured on that video, Maruk, which was taken from several kilometers outside the Mumbai dockyard area, gives you an unmistakable sense of just how massive that explosion really was. Now, a battery explosion, may not sound as lethal as it is, because on a submarine, an actual battery is a massive component. It's the very heart of a diesel-electric kilo-class submarine like the Sindhurakshak is, and it's the lifeblood of submarine. And we have reason now to believe, Arun, that the battery may have been, the charging process, which is a long and arduous process for the submarine before it sets out on operational patrol. It was also fully loaded with all of its weapons, which include 2 types of torpedoes, also anti-ship cruise missiles. So, there was a lot of ordnance on board, and we don't know yet if that may have contributed to the magnitude of this explosion, but there is a good chance that it did. So for now, like I said, last point is that the focus is on rescuing the people on board, assessing the damage, and trying to save as many of those 18 people on board as possible.
Okay, Shiv, stay on with us. We also have Arun, who's joining us from the ground in Mumbai. Arun, give us a sense, like Shiv was describing at this point, it seems as the submarine has almost sunk.
In fact, Maruk, we are waiting for Navy Chief to arrive, because the sources are saying he might arrive any time between 10 and 11. And you can see it's the Lion Gate, the entry point where the Navy Chief would be coming, and you'll be getting inside. And inside 5 kilometers away from this particular Lion Gate, the salvage operation is still going on. Because in the morning time, in the night time, it was very difficult, challenging for the Navy to do a rescue operation. Even the fire department said that 16 fire engines and a 9 fire tanker had been sent, and the fire was under control, but the cooling operation was taking place. But now in the morning, definitely now they'll be searching all the 18 personnel trapped inside the submarine. So it would be a very challenging aspect, and they are waiting for the Navy Chief to arrive and to discuss, and to maybe to give another press release to the media. What Shiv has been saying, that 18 it has been confirmed now officially that the 18 per person have been declared missing. So definitely they might be taking a lot of time to come out openly to discuss all the details, what has gone inside since last 8 to 9 hours. Important part here is that all the 18 personnel are inside, but we have no specific information how many have been injured, how many is any casualty or not. But still, it's a wait and watch situation, waiting for Navy Chief, and maybe throughout the day we might come out some more details in next few hours.
Sandeep, Deputy Editor of India Today, also joining us on the phone line. Sandeep, we get a sense that you have been reporting as far as the reasons behind this explosion are concerned. We believe that an inquiry has already been instituted, but what are you hearing from your sources?
Well, one of the causes of this, possible causes of this explosion appear to be a buildup of volatile hydrogen gases during the battery charging. If you remember, there's been a previous incident concerning the same submarine in February 2010, where one crew member was killed. And there was a board of inquiry after that blast, which pointed pinned the cause at this leak of hydrogen gas from the submarine's battery. Now, it's a very tricky situation because you have a submarine that's filled with torpedoes and missiles, and then at the same time you have this buildup of volatile gases discharged from the batteries. And what we are hearing now, it's possibly a result of this gas buildup, which could have triggered off an explosion, and which in turn triggered off another explosion, which cooked off these missiles and torpedoes. So what we are hearing now is the primary indication is that there appears to be an explosion caused by the release of hydrogen gas from the batteries.
Okay, Sandeep Unithan, thank you so much. Shiv, coming back to you, at this point we believe that the fire has been brought under control, but considering that this submarine was on an operation patrol, all set for an operation patrol, clearly it was fully loaded. What are the risks that are still involved in this entire operation?
Several risks. Yeah, you're right, Maruk, that the fire has been brought under control, at least as far as the salvage operation is concerned. But the information that Sandeep was just bringing to our viewers, it is completely in line with the images on your screen, because if you notice, and our viewers have no doubt noticed, you can actually see two separate explosions actually happening. And Sandeep said there was possibly one explosion when those gases ignited after a potential battery malfunction, after which there may have been a detonation of some or all of those weapons on board, which may have been that second explosion. So what Sandeep says ties in with the visuals that we've got on air right now. But apart from that, the risks involved inside a submarine, even when it's out at sea, even when it's berthed, they are constant, Maruk, because you're in a completely enclosed structure. There are forces acting against it. It's built to dive. Submariners, by their very nature, in the line of duty, they're constantly very close to death. But this particular incident, and there have been incidents around the world where there have been gas leaks, sailors have been killed, there have been catastrophic pressure consequences and accidents where submarines have sunk to the bottom. Disasters involving submarines are perhaps the most unthinkable and terrifying of all, naval disasters. But this one, happened right there in the dock, where help was at hand, where weapons were fully loaded, its batteries were charging, it was getting ready for operational patrol, which, like you rightly said, meant that it was fully loaded with weapons. So as of now, even though help is at hand, the fire brigades are there, it's going to be an extremely long and critical operation, especially since 18 souls are still on board that submarine, Maruk.
Shiv, stay on with us. We also have Admiral Raja Menon on the phone line with us. Admiral, clearly these pictures that you might have been seeing on television screens across the country, these are not pictures that you see on an everyday basis. Perhaps not. I don't think in the history of the Indian Navy something like this has been seen. What do you attribute this to? We believe that it was the submarine that was ready for an operation patrol when this happened.
Well, at the moment, we can only speculate. Normally, explosions in submarines are attributed to excessive hydrogen. But hydrogen explosions are not normally as serious as this one. And the video of the explosion is not very encouraging, with white incendiary sparks coming out, which indicates that there's clearly some incendiary material that has gone off along with the normally the fire is an orange reddish glow, but this was very white, which indicates the presence of incendiary materials, so that's not very encouraging.
Okay, Admiral Rajaman, thank you so much for speaking to Headlines today. We also have the former Army, I beg your pardon, former Navy Chief on the phone line with us, Admiral Arun Prakash. Admiral, we've been looking at these pictures. It seems to be a disaster, an accident at this point. I mean, your first thoughts, and also what is the protocol that is likely to be followed at this point for viewers who really don't understand what happens at a situation like this, in a situation like this?
Well, I've only seen the visuals, and from that it's obvious it's been a fairly major explosion. The causes of the explosion will of course be found out, but a submarine is a very constricted metal tube and it's full of explosive material. You know, there's fuel, there is hydrogen coming from the battery, there are weapons with warheads, and there is electrical supply all over, and a small spark or a small accident can trigger off a massive explosion. Now it's for the experts and the Board of Inquiry to find out what happened, what went wrong, and it will all come out in good time.
But would you say the very fact that INS Sindhurakshak has been jinxed, there have been problems in the past, that there would be something like this that perhaps could have been averted had you know, a certain mechanism and procedure been put in place, or this is would you attribute this to merely being an accident?
No, I won't say that. The Indian Navy submarine arm is a very professional set of people. Their drills and their standard operating procedures are very tight, and because they are conscious of the possibility of an accident in such a confined space. And if something goes wrong on a submarine, it's very difficult to fight a fire or control an accident. So they make sure that their drills and their procedures are absolutely watertight. But if something has gone wrong, it could be an accident, it could be human error, it could be a number of things. But I think it's too early to speculate at this point of time and jump to any conclusions.
Right, and at this point we believe that the submarine has sunk, but would you say that there is still danger around the area, or there are still you know, some kind of problems that can persist despite the submarine having sunk, considering that it was ready for an operation patrol and it was fully loaded?
Well, if, as you say, it was ready for an operational patrol, it was obviously carrying weapons and live weapons, one or more of which seem to have exploded from that big orange ball of fire. And the Navy's fought the fire, and if they put out the fire, then the immediate danger is over. Nothing more can happen, one hopes.
Okay. Admiral Arun Prakash, thank you so much for speaking with us at a point when we are looking at these pictures that have come in from the Mumbai Naval Dockyard. Clearly, what Admiral Prakash also said, that the immediate danger is over. The submarine, we believe, is sinking from the details that we are getting at this point. But the protocol, as far as the Navy is concerned, is still in place. The most important consideration for the Navy would be those 18 crew members on board that have been declared missing, and the search operations are still on. Let's listen into some eyewitness accounts that came in earlier in the day.
At 11:55 there was a big blast. It started with a big blast, and after that it goes on for around more than 15 minutes, and there was again a blast after 15 minutes. That was very huge, and after that I saw some fire brigades coming through, and then after half an hour it went down. But even though I don't know how much people they are injured, but it was a very big fire.
Right, Shiv Arun is still on the phone line with us. Shiv, we've been hearing several of the former army chiefs and personnel of the army speaking with us. At this point, it seems that the immediate danger is over, but wouldn't you say that the main consideration now for the Navy, now that the immediate danger is over, would be those 18 crew members that are still missing?
Well, only the fire has been brought under control, Maruk. I think the danger as far as the human lives is still not over yet. In fact, the information we're getting in from certain quarters is that the Navy actually fears the worst, and until that that categorization of 18 officially missing changes, it's still an extremely precarious and worrying situation. Our special correspondent Jugal Purohit just brought out some information that we're going to put out to our viewers shortly, that the Defense Ministry is likely to make a statement very shortly about what has happened at the Mumbai dockyard. And we've been hearing, you just spoke to Admiral Rajaman and Admiral Arun Prakash. And, the sense you get from speaking to these veterans, who've been on submarines, who know how these things work, is extremely worrying. They say it's not encouraging. The fact that there is, there was sparks and there was this white light in the explosion, suggests that there may have been a weapon detonation. So the theories, doing the rounds right now are not encouraging, to say the least. But I think in the next 10 to 15 minutes, Maruk, we'll have a much clearer picture of where things really stand, about what has happened to those 18 souls on board INS Sindhurakshak, as well as the salvage operation itself. Right now, I can tell you that the Navy, it's not looking good. It's definitely not looking good because only the fire has been brought under control, but the submarine has still been sunk. Those 18 people are still been on board and still officially designated as missing, Maruk.
Shivaru, stay on with us. Those pictures for our viewers, just to tell you at this point, updating you on the information that we are getting. The pictures that you see on the left-hand side of your screens, those are from the night pictures of INS Sindhurakshak when the explosion took place, which led to the fire. And on the other hand, on the right side of your screen, obviously the pictures coming in this morning. Commodore Uday Bhaskar, defense expert, is also on the phone line with us. Commodore, we've been speaking to several naval officers as well, but in the meantime we believe that he's spoken to us, Commodore Uday Bhaskar, reacting to this disaster at the Mumbai docks.
Clearly I would agree that this is a setback for the Navy, and the fact that a submarine that has just come back from Russia after having gone through an upgrade, and for this kind of an accident to take place will have a certain bearing on the numbers and the overall submarine capability as far as the Indian Navy is concerned. But if I could just add, I would not, as I said at this point, jump to any conclusion and say that it's quote-unquote an embarrassment, since you use the word, mainly because, a submarine as a platform has an inherent risk, which is always associated by the very nature of the platform. Now, it's very unfortunate that there was an accident of this nature. I think we're all concerned, and the highest priority is about the safety of the personnel.
Commodore Uday Bhaskar talking about how this comes as a huge embarrassment for the Navy. Shiv, wouldn't you agree to what Commodore Uday Bhaskar said? We'll go across to Shiv in just a bit, but to tell our viewers who are joining us at this point, the pictures that you see on your screens, perhaps never seen before, horrific pictures of huge explosions on board INS Sindhurakshak, which led to a massive fire. And now, from the latest that we are getting, INS Sindhurakshak, in fact, is sinking with only a bit or a portion of the submarine that can be seen. We also know at this point, the most important consideration for the Navy is that the immediate danger of what happened on board INS Sindhurakshak might have been averted, but the 18 crew members that were on board are still missing, and that becomes the most important criteria as far as the Navy is concerned. We believe an inquiry has already been instituted. There are several theories that are doing the rounds as to what led to the explosion. Remember, at this point, when this explosion took place, INS Sindhurakshak was on its way, all set for an operation patrol, which means it is fully loaded with ammunition and weapons on board, which has made this disaster even bigger. Shivaru joining us back on the phone line. Shiv, we've been talking to several experts, as you've been hearing, and Commodore Uday Bhaskar seems to suggest that this comes as a huge embarrassment for the Army. Would you agree with that viewpoint?
It's certainly an embarrassment, and it will be an embarrassment, at an appropriate time once the immediate operation is actually complete, Maruk, because, if you sift through, Commodore Uday Bhaskar is right, because if you sift through all the, details of what we're looking at right now as we report this story to our viewers, this is, at the very basic level, a peacetime loss. A submarine lost at sea during operations, during war, is conceivable. It's something that warfighters are prepared for. But a submarine, safely docked at the dockyard, midnight when nothing's really happening, routine procedures, when everything's supposed to be going absolutely fine, when an accident of that kind destroys a submarine, and that's the information we're going to be breaking in just a few seconds right now, is ultimately in the final analysis going to be an embarrassment for the Navy, because the questions that, come up are going to be extremely, penetrating and probing. Were standard operating procedures not followed? Were safety norms not followed? Were certain critical emergency drills not followed? All of those are questions that will come up, but I would, in my personal opinion and as a reporter, I would say that right now the focus will be, as far as the Navy is concerned, on those men on board. And like we've been bringing to our viewers, Maruk, there are two theories doing the rounds at this time. One is a single explosion theory. The other is a twin explosion theory. The single explosion theory talks about a battery malfunction, the leaking of, extremely inflammable hydrogen gas, which may have been, which may have detonated in a high pressure area, causing a massive explosion. The second theory is a twin explosion theory, which follows the first, where there was a hydrogen leak, following a smaller explosion, which then detonated weapons in the forward area of the Sindhurakshak, causing the much larger white light, explosion, which our viewers can see on their screens right now if they're looking at those pictures, which is basically representative of ordnance or weapons and inflammable incendiary material actually, igniting. So at this point of time, both those theories definitely on the table as far as the Navy is concerned. The Navy chief has left for Mumbai. He's going to be at the Mumbai dockyard very soon. He's been, practically non-stop on the phone with the Western Naval Commander, Vice Admiral Shekhar Sinha as well. Very shortly, we're going to get much more specific information, Maruk.
We continue with our big story that we are following, the blast or the explosion that happened on board INS Sindhurakshak as it was all set for an operation patrol. Following that, there was a massive fire. There's still two theories doing the rounds on what could have been the reason behind the blast on INS Sindhurakshak. Sources in the Navy say there is a strong likelihood of an accidental weapon detonation on board. The explosion apparently took place in the forward area of the submarine. Sources are also telling us that the submarine was to set on war patrol and it was awaiting orders. The Sindhurakshak was completely stocked up in terms of weapons, and these include the Type 5365 torpedoes and anti-ship cruise missiles. Another theory is that the explosion could have been caused because of a possible buildup of volatile hydrogen gas during battery changing. A similar explosion took place on the submarine in February 2010, in which one crew member was killed. The Board of Inquiry set up by the Navy has pinned the cause to a faulty battery valve that leaked the hydrogen. Those are pictures that you see on your screens that came in from last night. The disaster at the naval dock in Mumbai. At this point, like we said, there are two theories doing the rounds as to a possible reason that led to this disaster on board the INS Sindhurakshak. Shivaru joining us on the phone line. He's been reporting non-stop on this disaster on board the INS Sindhurakshak. For viewers who are joining us at this point, Shiv, what is the latest that we hear as far as the search operations are concerned?
The search and rescue operations are still very much on, Maruka. As we reported a short while ago, the fire has been brought under control. There was a massive fire that had actually spread, onto some other units at the naval dockyard as well. All of this has been brought under control, but the focus, like we've been reporting, is on the submarine itself. It's almost completely disappeared from view. The explosion was so extensive, the damage was so extensive that it almost completely sank. Only a very small, tiny portion of the fin, which is the conning tower that juts out of the dorsal part of the submarine, is still actually visible to the eye. The rest is completely submerged beneath the waterline at the Mumbai naval dockyard. And now the information that we're getting is that the 18 people on board, including 3 officers and 15 sailors, are still officially designated as missing. The rescue operation hasn't been able to reach them just yet, so they are still officially designated only as missing. But there is some fresh information that we're getting from our sources at the naval dockyard, Maruk, and I'd like to break that right now. Apparently, the damage to the submarine is so extensive that it is almost certain that once salvage operations are complete, and whichever way this actually goes, it's highly unlikely that INS Sindhurakshak will see operations ever again, and it is very likely that the submarine will actually have to be retired and written off because repairing a submarine after damage of this kind would be extremely A, uneconomical, and B, almost completely impossible, because there is no place in India where you could repair a submarine like this. And India would probably have to think twice before transporting a damaged submarine like this across the world to Russia or to another country to actually have it completely repaired. It would actually make more sense to get a new submarine. So that's the new information that we're getting about the extent of the damage on that submarine. But like I keep saying, the focus right now as far as those 18 personnel on board is extremely critical. Captain Rajesh Ramkumar, who's the commanding officer of INS Sindhurakshak, was not on board the submarine when the blast took place. He is in Mumbai, but he was not on board the submarine itself. His executive officer was on board the submarine and still is designated as missing, along with 2 other officers and 15 naval sailors, all of them submariners. The batteries were, the information we have, Maruk, is that the batteries were undergoing a charging operation, before this operational patrol, and that is likely to be, at the time when this explosion actually happened during a gas buildup of hydrogen gas, which may have quite likely detonated some weapons in the forward area as well.
Okay, Shiv, stay on with us. Jugal Purohit also joining us on the phone line. Jugal, Shiv has just been telling us that it seems there's a strong likelihood that the damage has been so extensive on board INS Sindhurakshak that it might be retired. Now, this submarine has had quite a checkered past. Didn't it just come back from Russia after being refurbished? We'll go to Jugal in just a bit, but Shiv is still on the phone line with us. Shiv, correct me if I'm wrong. Hasn't INS Sindhurakshak had a checkered past and it's just been refurbished and brought back from Russia?
You're absolutely right, Maruk. It has had a checkered past. It has had a pretty jinxed past, if I can call it that. I'll briefly take you and our viewers through that. It was commissioned in 1997, Maruk, and its first brush with trouble happened about 13 years later in 2010, when there was a battery fire related to its battery off the coast of Visakhapatnam, in which one sailor lost his life. Just 3 months after that fire, the submarine sailed to western Russia, to the Severodvinsk, submarine repair yard, where it has spent 3 years, from 2010 August till May 2013, in that ship, being completely overhauled, undergoing a midlife upgrade. You're absolutely right. It was repaired, it was refreshed, new systems were added to it, new safety systems were added to it. Its cooling system was modernized. It was given a new radar. It was fitted with a brand new anti-ship cruise missiles called the Club S. Several other safety and emergency systems, were checked, repaired, overhauled, and modernized. So the submarine that actually came back was a much more potent platform. It was supposed to be a much safer platform. So it's a very good question that you asked. Because this explosion that has happened, late last night, comes just about 4 months after that, virtually brand new submarine came back. And remember, not only was it a refreshed submarine, completely modernized and upgraded, Maruk, it's also one of the newest kilo-class submarines. It was, inducted only in 1997, making it just about 16 years old. And, anyone will tell you, Maruk, that 16 years is not very much in naval parlance. The ships that are operated by the Indian Navy are built to serve, anywhere between 35 to 40 years. So 16 would make it, a middle-aged vessel, having just undergone a refit, and there's no business for such an accident to actually happen. And the investigation will bring up precisely what happened on board.
Okay, Shiv, stay on with us. Sandeep Punyathan of India Today also joining us on the phone line. Sandeep, it seems that the theory about this explosion being caused due to battery charge seems to be gaining ground as to the reason behind the massive fire.
Yes, that's right, Maruk. In addition to that, I would also like to point out this other weapon that the submarine carries, which is a torpedo. It's a very unique kind of anti-ship torpedo that uses compressed oxygen to fire the torpedo out. It breathes oxygen under the sea as it goes in to attack its target. Now, this unique kind of torpedo, it's a Russian torpedo, and what we are hearing is that it is quite possible that there might have been a leakage of oxygen from this torpedo, which probably added to the fire from one of the battery compartments. So and the fact that a large portion of the explosion was reported in the forward section. Now, the forward section of the submarine, it's very interesting. There are 3 tires on this. The upper level is where the torpedo tubes are, Below that, you have the officers' spaces, the living compartments, and below that those compartments are where the batteries are packed. And in front of that is the sonar of the submarine. So it's a very lethal kind of mix if you're talking of gases building up and mixing and, triggering off a possible blast. So it's quite likely that this is what happened. There was a leakage, there was a fire, there was an explosion, which destroyed one or more of these weapons. And what we're also hearing is that it is most likely that the submarine is a write-off, that it will probably never enter service again because of the unique way in which these Russian submarines are built. They're not built in sections. They're built as complete structures. So one destruction of a forward compartment could have actually written off the submarine. It's a terrible blow for the Indian Navy, and it's possibly the largest peacetime loss of crewmen that the Navy has seen, possibly since the 71 war.
Terrible loss to the Indian Navy, says Sandeep Unnithan. Sandeep, I want to ask you this, without getting into the realm of speculation. You're saying the forward part of the submarine is the one that has been damaged most, and that's where most of the crew members would be at this point when the blast took place? Would you hazard that guess? Yeah. Yes.
Because a lot, like I said earlier, the officers' spaces, the crew compartments are located directly below the torpedo tubes. A submarine, it's a very compact fighting platform, so you have to utilize every possible space. It's very confined, it's very cramped, and it's not very unusual to have the weapons located above crew compartments and the like, and the battery is right below that. So it's any little explosion, any little accident could have catastrophic consequences. And this forward section is actually where you have not only the crew spaces, you have the weapons also stored, you have the sonar, and you have the battery compartments. One section of the battery compartment is located in the forward area.
Okay,
so we actually,
Thanks so much for those details, Sandeep. Go ahead, please finish that thought.
Yes, so we don't know exactly what happened, where the problem began, but it's very likely that it was a leak from the batteries, and it is for sure that the explosion that you're seeing on screen is from one of the weapons going off, either the torpedoes or the missiles, or possibly both.
So, Sandeep, just a final question, so that our viewers have a better understanding. We know that the details are very sketchy at this point, but when you say that as far as a leakage from a torpedo is concerned, would you amount that to faulty weapon system, or would that be, pinned down as negligence?
Well, I'd like to, take you back to August 12, 2000. If you remember, there was a Russian submarine called the Kursk, which sank in the Barents Sea. While it was test firing a particularly new type of torpedo. It was a hydrogen peroxide torpedo, which they were firing for the first time. That accident happened while the submarine was out at sea, was doing war exercises. And what happened was one of these torpedoes exploded in the forward compartment. It sank the whole submarine. It killed over 100 crewmen.
Right.
And that was probably the most recent example that we have of a faulty torpedo destroying a submarine. And very luckily, this submarine was alongside, it was at anchor, which would have allowed a large number of the crewmen to get up to safety.
Okay. Sandeep Unnithan, thank you so much for your perspective and details that you're giving us. But at this point, some more details coming in. Like Sandeep also said, and earlier, Shiv Arun, our deputy editor, has been reporting that naval sources at this point are telling headlines today that the damage to INS Sindhurakshak has been so extensive that the submarine is likely to be written off. The Navy has virtually ascertained this fact that weapon detonation occurred during the fire on board INS Sindhurakshak. Shiv Arun on the phone line with us. Shiv, clearly one of the biggest losses to the Indian Navy in peacetime if INS Sindhurakshak is indeed written off.
It will be. It will easily be the largest peacetime loss, like Sandeep rightly pointed out, since the 1971 war and the sinking of the INS Kukri by Pakistan in the Arabian Sea, Maruk. Because, like Sandeep also pointed out, the damage to the submarine, and that's the information that we're getting from our sources in the Navy as well, has been so extensive that either salvaging or repairing the submarine is perhaps unthinkable at this time. The fact is, we've also got information coming in that a second Indian Navy submarine, INS Sindhurakshak, which is a sister submarine of the same class, it's also a Russian-built kilo-class submarine of the Indian Navy, did also suffer some damage in this explosion. It was docked very close to INS Sindhurakshak and also sustained some damage. Now, the extent of the damage on the second submarine it's not possible to ascertain right now. I will be getting more details in just a few minutes from now. But we understand that it is nowhere as close to the extent of the damage that the INS Sindhurakshak has actually sustained, Maruk. But the information that you're putting out right now is absolutely right. The damage has been so grave, a possible breach in the metal hull of the submarine itself, including extensive material and structural damage to the actual platform itself, means that the submarine is completely unusable. There is no way that it will ever be put to operational use again. We're getting this from very senior sources in the Navy who've had a chance to inspect some of the damage on site at the naval dockyard, and are in the midst of those salvage operations. They've been kind enough to give us just a few details, and we're being very sensitive. We're trying not to disturb the people who are there right now, who are obviously, very involved in this salvage operation, because at the end of the day, the bottom line, despite everything that we're putting out right now, is that there are 18 human lives on board that submarine. They're still unaccounted for. They're still officially designated as missing. A.K. Antony, the defense minister, is likely to make a statement about this accident in Parliament, very shortly when Parliament, convenes. So we're going to be waiting for many more details coming out. I can tell you that there are several quarters within the Navy who are fearing the worst. I've been on the phone constantly since very late last night with senior members, from the retired community as well, former Navy chiefs, and many people haven't had night's sleep as well. They've been looking at these pictures. We've been putting out on headlines today. They've been online. They've been speaking to their juniors in the service, trying to get a fix on what this is. Because at the end of the day, this is a story, that goes out and appeals to everybody who's been in the Indian Navy. And I think it's a story that we seriously cannot get out of because, like you rightly pointed out, Maruf, this is definitely one of the biggest peacetime tragedies the Indian Navy will ever have to sustain.
Shiv, stay on the phone line with us. We're going to come back to you, but Kamlesh Sutar is joining us from the ground in Mumbai. Kamlesh, from where you are, how far is the site of the accident and what are you hearing about the damage to the other submarine?
Maruk, behind me is the Lion Gate, and from here a few distance onward the spot of accident. But let me tell you, the media is not allowed beyond a certain point ahead of the gate, and the rescue operations are on. What we have been told that there is a likelihood that another submarine might have been damaged, but the extent of damage could not be assessed more. But it is believed that it is not as serious as it is to INS Sindhurakshak. INS Sindhurakshak is reportedly damaged. That is what Shiv was also pointing out to. The rescue operations will take another 1.5 hours before we can hear a concrete word or an official word from the Navy on the 18 missing sailors. Maruk?
Right, Kamlesh, stay on with us. Shiv Arun is also on the phone line with us. Shiv, I want to ask you that both you and Sandeep Purnathan have been talking about how the weapons detonated. Now, we know that INS Sindhurakshak was fully loaded with weapons because it was all set to go for an operation patrol. Now, what is the likelihood that despite the fire having been put out at this point, the immediate danger having been taken care of, the fact that those weapons that are still on board that particular submarine might not detonate?
That's an excellent point you make there, Maruk. And in fact, that is something that the Navy is very concerned about, which is why they've moved as many of the units that were very close to the INS Sindhurakshak completely away from it. In fact, the INS Sindhurakshak, which is the other submarine that has been damaged in this explosion, also had weapons and ordnance on board. So there was a threat about what would happen to that submarine as well. But you're bang on when you say that, there's a concern about the ordnance and weapons that are still on board the INS Sindhurakshak itself. Now, the information that we've been getting from on-site is that the fire has been brought under control. So at least visibly, there doesn't appear to be a threat to any weapons that may, have been undetonated, or, the fire may have missed on INS Sindhurakshak itself. But, considering just how volatile operations of this kind are, the power has, there is still power being there are electrical systems that are still on inside the submarine. The electrical systems haven't been switched off yet because they are required for the the emergency systems and emergency components to actually put out the onboard fire. So therefore, there still is definitely a risk as far as those other weapons are concerned. So that's a good point you raised. But what we can confirm is visibly from persons who are at the naval dockyard is that they have been able to bring the fire under control. But that's only sort of fleeting relief because it is now that the real salvage operation is going to begin.
Now that the real salvage operation is going to begin, Shivaru there reporting for us on the pictures that you see, and really that tell just part of the story. Just to quickly recap for viewers who are joining us at this point, INS Sindhurakshak, those are the explosions that you see that happened on board INS Sindhurakshak. At this point, we are being told that INS Sindhurakshak has almost sunk. It might be written off is what naval sources are telling us, but the most important consideration really are the lives of the 18 crew members that are on board INS Sindhurakshak, and that search operation is still on. There are still questions being asked as to what caused the explosion. Was it accident? Was it negligence? All those questions will be answered in due course of time, but we'll continue with this big story that we are following here on Headlines Today. Stay with us, don't go away. And breaking news is that sources in the Indian Navy are saying that missiles on board got armed and detonators went off, causing the explosion. Sources are saying that the ship was to sail out on a war patrol and that it was fully armed. This INS Sindhurakshak had a special provision to not just carry torpedoes but also missiles. We've been talking about this. Reports say that the detonator for the missile went off when a loading exercise was taking place. We have Jugal Purohit on the phone line with us. Jugal, clearly now the picture becoming extremely clear as to what actually happened on INS Sindhurakshak.
Well, that's right, Maruk. According to sources I've been speaking to, they're saying that since the INS Sindhurakshak was to set out on a war patrol, maybe today or later, tomorrow, the entire exercise of stocking up of the INS Sindhurakshak in all possible ways, which means material, which means food supply, as well as, most importantly, arms and ammunition is concerned, it was taking place at that time. And owing to certain modifications that the INS Sindhurakshak has undergone in the recent past, it was a submarine which could not just carry torpedoes but also missiles. And missiles, as people aware of the subject will know, need a certain detonator in them to actually trigger them off and do what they're required to do. Now, at the time of loading of these missiles, according to some sources who I've been speaking to, it seems that the detonator, which remember has the limit of trigger for which is extremely low. It can, even if accidentally handled or mishandled, can actually set off the entire chain of explosions. It does seem now that that is what has happened, which has led to multiple such missiles actually taking off. We are aware that the submarines in the vicinity of the Sindhurakshak also got affected. Thankfully, not serious damage they've suffered. But yes, this has emerged as one of the very, very strong probable reasons why this has happened. And remember, when the missiles do take off, these are missiles which are extremely lethal. Their targets are certainly ships. Their targets are certainly submarines. You can imagine the kind of ammunition and the payload that they carry. Now, if that has to take place in such a constricted, confined area, remember one of the missiles have hit the wall of the naval dockyard. A very serious damage yet again, but not as big compared to what has happened. And now, as I was saying, is Maharuk, the high tide time between 10:40 a.m. and 7 p.m. This is essentially the time when the water will retreat, the levels will come down, and the divers of the Indian Navy who are anyways at the job will perhaps, hopefully, find it easier now to get into the conning tower of the submarine and locate their trapped personnel.
No, but from what I'm gathering from what you're saying and reporting at this point, you're saying that the missiles on board got armed and detonators went off. This is an extremely serious charge. Does this point towards pure negligence on the part of those who were on board?
Well, Maruk, it's really very early to actually talk about the fault, if at all. But yes, it does look like that this detonator, which I told you the limit of a trigger for which is extremely low, should have perhaps been handled with more care. But as I said, it will be a little too early to talk about just why it so happened, because even right now, as I said, this is emerging as one of the very strong probable reasons why this has happened. The Navy, of course, saying that the Board of Inquiry is the authority who can tell us what went wrong, by whose fault, and by what degree. So we will have to await that. But yes, it does seem that perhaps all the procedures which were required were perhaps not adhered to, which has actually caused this. Now, inside the naval dockyard, I mean, it's not even a situation where your warship is out on patrol, the submarine is out on patrol, owing to some accident, this is what has happened. This is inside the naval dockyard. It's an extremely embarrassing situation. Also, Maru, we must understand, for a navy which claims to be a blue water navy, an aircraft carrier building navy, just yesterday we had that situation. We had the Arun going critical last week, and now to suffer such a huge loss of the submarine, of the 18 personnel inside the harbour, is an extremely embarrassing situation. The Navy, obviously and rightfully so, is tight-lipped and it's fine for the right reasons. But what we've just reported is something which is coming out from very credible quarters of the Indian Navy, people who know the case, people who are aware, and people who are monitoring the situation, Maru.